Why do we do what we do? This is something hardly any one of us ever talks about. So why not take a look at it? At the core, there is a key driving force and the very incentives that make us do what we do. Many speakers have come and gone and told us about this key driving force, but hardly anyone has ever laid emphasis on these incentives. What are incentives, you would ask? Incentives are anything that motivate us to perform a set task. Incentives are not that simple and they aren't unidimensional as they seem to be. In fact, incentives have three ways to look at them: morally, economically, and socially. So let's take an example. Why didn't your friend help you cheat in that last exam? Or why don't you and I rob a bank or burn down a school? Some of us say it, but we are never going to do it. This is because incentives play such an imperative role in our lives and we hardly ever take notice. This is because the incentives work in three ways. Morally, they fill us with guilt and repentance, and we might lose our invaluable freedom. Socially, we wonder what our friends, families, or even society would think of us. And lastly, economically, we would have to pay a pretty hefty fine. Incentives, as society would have you believe, they aren't intuitive at all. Let me prove that to you. Some economists and researchers did a case study at an American daycare center. They found out, on an average, 8 parents would come in late to get their kids. And they decided to put a $3 fine, because that's how everything works. You put a fine on something, and the number of people doing it goes down. However, the number of parents coming in late doubled. This happened because the parents had an innate feeling of guilt that weighed down heavily on their conscience. And that was a strong moral incentive. However, the economists, without realizing, put a weaker economical incentive of a $3 fine. And the parents thought, wait, why don't I just work a little longer and come in a little later to get my child, which is costing the center a measly $3 to take care of my child longer. And thus, the number doubled. The economists went on to learn their lesson and they cut off the fine. Companies do the same. Companies which tend to progress better put heavy incentives on the personal growth of their employees and have tended to show both tremendous progress and profits as the employees are satisfied with their said incentives. Well, this is all great. We now know the power of incentives as this mystical guiding force that forms and controls all our decisions. The real question here is, what do we do now that we know this? So in life, whether you're dealing with an unsubordinate coworker or telling a spoiled brat son what to do, or even a stubborn teacher for that matter, you can use the power of incentives to maneuver your way through all parts of life.